has been 3 years ago today that I purchased this thing. I've been sitting in front of it for the last 3 years while it wasn't working, while it's needed repairs, while I was waiting for the title, going through all this drama, and then I finally have it running as good as it looks. Just to do a little recap, and for those of you who already know the story, feel free to fast forward through this. But 3 years ago today, I took a one-way ticket to CNC Motors in Upland, California to buy my dream car, to buy my dream Ferrari 360 Modena. I had gone through some major personal struggles. I was in a very bad accident, and I sold my beautiful little white Porsche Cayman, and I thought, you know, if I could ever drive again and walk and all this stuff, I'm gonna get a dang Ferrari. Luckily, I was able to meet those goals and to meet some financial goals. I was so excited. I had heard of CNC Motors prior. They had a very good reputation, and I wanted to get it from a dealership that had a great shop. So in case anything were to go wrong with the car, I had some recourse and I could take it to them. Unbeknownst to me, when I purchased this thing, you know, and I thought there was a bunch of small red flags that I might have been choosing to ignore. For example, all their gas pumps were shut off, so they couldn't fill up the tank for me. And there was just some like interesting things like around the shop that I noticed. But you know, they had a whole lot full of supercars, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, McLarens, a Ford GT. I didn't really think about it. And so anyways, I purchased it. I had wired them a bunch of money, and then I had financed the rest. I'm driving home. I just purchased this thing. I'm so excited. And I noticed that when I'd go into sixth gear, that it would kind of flash into neutral. Thought that was kind of strange. I have driven a few Ferraris before, but not this particular one. And I thought like, well, is that like an overheating thing? Is it like a safety issue that's going on with it? And anyway, it made it back to Sacramento. I just kind of kept it out of sixth gear, and I drove kind of slowly on the freeway. And then the next morning I wake up and I noticed that there is a bunch of liquid all over my garage floor. I called up my sales associate. I said, what the heck is going on? And he recommended that I take it to a local shop in town. They would cover the bill, they meaning CNC Motors. It turned out after about a month and a half that the heat exchanger had broke or ruptured, and then that flooded my gearbox full of coolant. This is like a worst case scenario type of thing. And I'm like, oh man, who's gonna cover that bill? That would be very expensive, because a new gearbox is $18,000. But you know, I was prepared to get rid of the car at that point if it was going to be too expensive. CNC Motors paid a transponder unit to pick up the car from Sacramento, ship it back to them, and then they started working on it, right? I never got a confirmation from the car shipping place or CNC Motors. I had no idea if it was delivered or not, and I was getting a little worried. It's been a few weeks at this point. So I keep calling, I email, then finally the service manager gets back to me, and he goes, oh yeah, we're working on it. He'd send me a picture and all this stuff. Well, they had it for a substantial amount of time, and then they stopped returning my phone calls and emails. Wow, like, okay, very worried at this point. Now I've owned the car for a few, like what, three and a half months, and I have no possession of it. And in fact, I hadn't even gotten the title or registration or anything. And so I was wondering, like, this is odd, you know? I'm getting very worried. Then I see this video on YouTube through a guy named Dan at Normal Guy Supercar, and he was interviewing someone named Shane. And Shane had a yellow F430 that he was selling with CNC Motors because they were a consignment dealership. That means, you know, when you want to sell your Ferrari or whatever, you give it to CNC Motors. They take a commission. When the deal is done, they're supposed to give the money to the owner of the car. The owner of the car is supposed to give the title to CNC so they can process the DMV paperwork. After watching Shane and Dan on Normal Guy Supercar, I was getting a little worried. They were talking about CNC Motors, and I was thinking like, man, am I wrapped up in this? I mean, I own a media production company, and so I make videos for a living, not really about cars, but for other things. And so I went on YouTube and I said, where's my Ferrari? Within a few days, that thing had like 70-something thousand views. And then I got a phone call saying, hey Matt, if you don't have that car, they probably have pocketed your money, and the owner of the car doesn't even know about this. You need to get that back in your possession or you're out everything. I was really scared. And so on Easter Sunday, actually, I drove down there. I waited for the owner of CNC Motors to come the next day on Monday, and he eventually shows up, and I said, hey, I'm here to retrieve my car. And the thing was all put back together. It looked like it was running fine. They put a new heat exchanger in it, supposedly, a new battery. I didn't really trust the work that had been done, so I had it shipped back to Sacramento, then had it checked out by Salerno Motorsports and did a post-purchase inspection. I had filed a complaint with the DMV saying that, hey, I never got my title from this dealership, and I was just one out of 100 or 200 people that this is happening with. And turns out this was like a massive fraud scheme that it's probably the largest one actually in DMV history, and yet I'm wrapped up in it. After about posting a few more YouTube videos, the owner of this car contacted me. He goes, Matt, I think you have my car. We started working together. We were working with the Consumer Vehicle Fraud Fund. We were working with the police and a few other entities to figure out how we can get this sorted out. And unfortunately, mine was a twofold issue, meaning I'm dealing with all this fraud and investigation and stuff, but also the car's a complete lemon. It's not drivable. It doesn't really have a second gear. Radiator hose blew. I just have no idea what shape it's in. After having a post-purchase inspection done by Salerno Motorsports, they noticed some odd crankshaft end float, and they're like, we don't even know what we need to do to get this fixed. We have to diagnose the lower part of the motor, tear it apart, see, and they found a few other things. This is bad news. I mean, we're looking at now like $50,000 worth of repairs on a car that I don't even own and I can't register. And so I had to wait about 550 days in order to even get the title from the original owner once he was made whole, or mostly whole. And then once I owned the car, I was faced with the decision, what do I do from here? And I really didn't want to sell it at a loss, because if I were to just sell this thing in its present condition, that would be, like probably $35,000 to $40,000 I would just lose. I'd be making car payments on a car I don't even have. To me, it was in my best interest to get the car repaired. It's better to have a working Ferrari than nothing at all and a massive car payment. And so I figured out a few different ways how to come up with the money. Initially, I had bought this for $75,000 and plus tax. I knew that I'd probably have to replace the clutch and the timing belts, but this was a massive undertaking. Well, then one day, FerrParts reached out to me. They heard my story. They felt bad for me. They're like, hey, Matt, we have a possible good deal for you. What if we sell you an engine and a gearbox out of a wrecked Ferrari 360? Then we swap it out with your engine and you have a working Ferrari. Well, shoot, that sounds pretty good to me. And they did cut me a pretty good deal. I don't want to say what it is on YouTube right now. It was a good enough deal that I couldn't say no to. I am very thankful for them, reaching out and offering that. That does mean a lot. Boy, it is bright out here. But man, the car is running great. So then we needed to find a shop that could do this engine swap and gearbox swap fairly quickly. We found someone. He was really great, very meticulous about his work, and did a lot of extra stuff and really made the engine run great. So for some reason, it took a long time to get the engine to the shop, and then we were missing some parts, and then we had to order more stuff and more stuff. And anyway, to make a even longer story just long, we ended up replacing the engine, the gearbox, an F1 pump, a few sensors, let's see, the clutch. We kept the original flywheel, a couple like hood struts, some stuff with the F1 system. See, we had to swap out a throttle body. The repairs were adding up fast. I wasn't really thrilled about that, but for the most part, I wasn't even thrilled about how long everything took. And this is something that they kind of don't tell you when you buy one of these things, but to get parts for this car is a very arduous process, and it just takes weeks, if not months, for things to come in. That's just how it is. It's frustrating, it's annoying, but it is what it is. So anyway, let's say I took that in April of 2023, and then I would get it back, and then something else would go wrong. We kept having issues with the F1 system, getting that dialed in. Finally, I got it back, and then it died on me, and that was my last video that I posted. And very frustrating. Like, everything's supposed to be done. So then I had it towed to Salerno Motorsports to have them double check everything, and they found that part of this like F1 harness was like dangling, and then once it would heat up, it would like disconnect part of the system. And then also on top of that, the computer was throwing these potentiometer codes. Now, those are some very expensive sensors, and it also took a long time to get in. I wanted to have this car for about a month and put some miles on it to make sure that this is finally it. This is finally the car that I bought, that I've always wanted. It's running great. And so I did. I put about 800 miles on it since I've gotten it back. I've been driving all over the place, kind of staying within town just in case it does break down again. But man, it has been great. It has been so dialed in. It shifts amazingly. It has a ton of power. It sounds good. Finally, like 3 years later, I look at this as kind of a mental marathon. Basically meaning this was a very stressful purchase, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong with the car, minus like a massive engine fire. But really, like, it might as well have just had one. And I wish that a pre-purchase inspection would have solved this issue, but really, like, I mean, you can't diagnose a heat exchanger before it's about to rupture. So that was the major culprit of this whole thing. And then plus add on all the fraud. Now the good news, well, not good news, but Clay Tom, the owner of CNC Motors, recently was indicted. He owes about $8 million to people. So at least there's some restitution. But unfortunately, he messed over a lot of people and owes a lot of money to people, and some of those people are never going to be made whole. So I wanted this to be a mental marathon of how I can deal with things, how I can persevere to the end and enjoy this working piece of art, not listen to all the haters on YouTube and just, who said, oh, just get rid of it, it's a headache, cut your losses, blah, 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 blah. I don't know, like, to me, I would much rather spend a little extra money to get this running and dialed in, and then have this as a token of like what we can achieve if we just have patience and work really hard. I've been sitting in front of it for years talking about it, how sucky of a situation it is, and man, like, here we are. We're at the end. We're finally at the end. I can enjoy it. I can put miles on it. I could take it to Cars and Coffee or roll around with the Ferrari Club or the Ferrari Owners Club and just enjoy for once. And yes, of course, I'm always a little worried in the back of my head, like, oh man, is this thing going to explode on me, or what else is going to happen? The wheel going to fall off again? Am I going to be stranded on the freeway again? I think we're finally out of the woods, and hopefully I won't have to do anything to this for 10 years because just about everything is new in it. The only thing I should be doing is the oil change and brakes and tires, but other than that, I do not want to spend any more on this. The good news is the engine that I did put in it only had about 29,000 miles. So it's like a little bit newer, and all the sensors and different parts that were installed came from newer versions of the car from like 2003, 2004. So they have better heat coatings and whatnot to help, I guess, I don't know. But anyways, that is the update. And you know, feel free to use my story if you're going through something that seems impossible to deal with, and if it takes years to get over, just push through to the end. Just don't give up. Don't listen to the people saying, oh, you know, lose a bunch of money and just forget about it or whatever. There's a reason why you bought this in the first place. And yes, it's unfortunate. Sometimes people just get screwed over, like myself. But hey, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I have been able to help other supercar owners who are going through similar issues still to this day, from shady consignment dealerships to dealing with fraud or buying something that wasn't as advertised or whatever. And so I do think that this YouTube channel has helped people. I don't mind putting myself out there and showing my vulnerabilities and, you know, whatnot if it could help people. And that's where I'm at. So I'm just trying to enjoy this thing, and I think it's fun so far. And I don't plan on really making any more YouTube videos about this. This is the end of this whole saga chapter in my life about it. I never really wanted to be a YouTuber in the first place. However, that was a way that I got my car back and eventually got the title and then eventually got it fixed. And so I am grateful that I did that. That's it. Thanks for liking, commenting, but no need to subscribe. I think this is it. Talk to you later, you guys.